Today I'm taking behind the scenes, the inner workings of what it's like to work with manufacturers and how to deal with when situations come up. Now, I worked with Vondre for many years. Back in 2013, they sent me some of their swing line to look over, test out, and the same testing I did recently, and they were awesome. Honestly, probably the best sleeping bags I had at that point in testing, along with Sierra Designs. They worked awesome, they were put together awesome, and quite frankly, over the last 10 years, or the last decade, they performed awesomely, and they still perform exactly how they did back then, 10 years later. In comes the new testing. I reached out to Vondre, I said, hey, can you send me your Bloody Mary sleeping bag? I think that's going to be the best overall sleeping bag I could recommend. If it performs like your swing line did, a decade ago, I think I can totally recommend that bag for all around best winter sleeping bag for most of North America. And basically I thought that was going to be the bag. That was going to be the bag to recommend based on a previous usage of the gear that the company made. So they shipped this sleeping bag from France, or where they make it manufactured in Tunisia. They shipped that over here. I got it and I was like, the draft tube on this thing is really weak. It was anemic. I could feel the nylon on both sides of the draft tube, which goes all the way down the sleeping bag and keeps the cold air out from the zipper area. And I was like, this is really strange. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, I think there might be like a QA thing. The draft tube on this is super thin. I'm looking at it. It looks like it's just collapsed. And I can touch nylon to nylon. I can feel there's really no down between here. Hey, what's up with this? And they said, oh, just let it sit over the weekend, let it fluff up, which makes sense. I always tell people, keep your sleeping bags out or in the storage sack, not the stuff sack, the storage sack, so they stay puffed up. And I was like, all right, I can do that. I don't think it's gonna help because I can actually literally feel there's no down in between there. So I let it out the whole weekend. The rest of the bag fluffed up fine because I could feel there was down in there. It just wasn't expanded. And then, I'm looking at it throughout the weekend and I'm like, this ain't gonna change. So every time I say, hey, this is not gonna change, or this didn't change. Here's some pictures. I looked at your website, I looked at videos that were from 10 years ago. They did some awesome videos 10 years ago where they kind of talked about all their bags. The Bloody Mary was one of those bags. So I took some screen grabs and I'm like, in these videos I can see that the draft tube is pluff. It's plush looking. I can visually see that it's plush looking. But the draft tube and the one I have is collapsed. And even if, there's not even like a ton of down at the bottom of it, like it just got, pushed down or whatever in the draft tube. Like it's just anemic. So they asked for the total weight of the bag because they weigh each of the bags and they come in. And I gave them the weight. It seemed like it was a little low, but nothing major. So they sent me another one. So I got the other one. Exact same issue. I'm like, guys, this draft tube is pretty much the exact same thing. I can touch between it and there's no down, for the majority of this draft tube. At the bottom there is, by the top, there's definitely none, and then about 3/4 of the way down there's definitely none. And they're like, oh, well, it might have shifted or whatever, and yada yada yada. And I wiggled it, moved it around, and tried to get the down up there, and it's still anemic. It's nylon to nylon. I'm trying my best here to figure this out, given the fact that these are a top-of-the-line sleeping bag and my past experiences with the manufacturer. So then they sent me a Shocking Blue, which is like a 0-degree bag, which is what I would consider a 0-degree bag, competitive with 0-degree bags. And I got that one, and the draft tube's reasonable. I'd say it's reasonable. I can feel draft. I can feel down through the whole draft tube. Okay. But the Bloody Mary, they're making me seem, when I'm talking to them, like, oh, you don't understand how sleeping bags are made. Just all kinds of things going back and forth. And I'm trying to reason with them and say, hey, I've seen in my lifetime and used, I don't know, like 30 to 40 sleeping bags, different sleeping bags. I'm telling you, there's definitely a problem with this sleeping bag. And they're just kind of like waving me off. So, I'm going to show you the details and you let me know. And I've tried to figure out the best way to show you this. Because when it comes to down, you can compress it. It's really hard to measure it, if you will, when it's already in the sleeping bag, the draft tube. I was going to use my calipers. Where are they at? I was going to use my calipers and show you that way. But the problem with that is this will compress it, you know, if you squeeze too much. So the best way I could think of it is just actually show you, like this stuff over here, is just to show you what it looks like. So I held it at the same place at the top, right where the Velcro is. I held it at the same place at the bottom. I gave it reasonable tension, and I looked at the old swing line. So this is, they still make the swing line, and you can see there's a bulge. There's a bulge of down insulation all throughout it. I looked at the current Shocking Blue that they sent me. You can see again, holding the same places, there's a bulge of insulation. And I looked at the one that they sent me that I haven't altered, because I did alter one. And you can see that when I'm holding it, it's basically just collapsing upon itself. There's nothing in there. And that's with me working the down from the bottom all the way through this draft tube as much as I can. There's nothing there. So what I did was I opened this up, opened this seam up right here, and I took 1.5 ounces-ish of down on one of these Bloody Mary sleeping bags, and I filled this myself. And as you can see, it's filled. Actually, this is a decent way to show it. You can see that, you know, there's down in here, right? There's a poof of down. So I fixed this one that I have, that I've used this year. Now this is the other one they sent me. I don't know if you can see that, but like, it's thin. It is super, super thin. You can see that? Like, there's nothing there. I go all the way down to here. You know, this is 3/4 of the way down. Barely anything. Now this is their Shocking Blue that I got, that I said is reasonable. You can see there's poofiness to it. There's some down in there. But getting 2 Bloody Mary sleeping bags having the exact same problem, if I was the manufacturer, I'd want to go check out the Bloody Mary line and see who's working on it. Are they putting the right amount of down in? Is this going out right? Etc. But they didn't. So a sleeping bag that I was going to recommend like wholeheartedly, I just can't now. And I can recommend their Shocking Blue. This Bloody Mary line, having 2 sent to me, you know, separately within, I don't know, within about a month of each other. You know, if you're going to put some down in this, then yeah, I can recommend it. The rest of the bag is great. But this is a key feature. Like, if you look back on my Ballandre 5, I think it was 7 degrees, 7-degree test that I put out there, the one thing I mentioned is you can 100% feel cold air coming in through this zipper. And the reason that was because I didn't have this altered at that point. I just went out the way they shipped it to me, and I said to myself, I know this is going to be a weak feature, but I'm curious how it will perform. And I can tell you one thing, since I've altered this, it performs dramatically better. So that's a little behind the scenes of what goes on in testing and working with manufacturers. It is interesting. Mountain Hardware, I reached back out to them. There's another behind the scenes. This isn't just all about Ballandre. Reached out to Mountain Hardware and said, hey, your top of the line sleeping bag you sent me really did not perform very well at all. I'm not sure why. You know, do you want to send me the Gore-Tex version, because the Bishop Pass Gore-Tex you sent me performed really well, and they never responded back. On the flip side, Thermarest sent me this after I said to them, hey, your Parsec 0 degree performed awesomely. I was a little squished in it. Could you send me a large one, a tall one? And they said, we don't have that right now. And I said, well, how about you send me your 20 degree? This is their, which one is this? Hyperion. This is their Hyperion 20 degree. And they sent me that. So it's interesting how you talk to different companies. Stone Glacier sent me a 0 and a 20 degree. Like, they were just like, boom, we want to be involved in both of these tests that you're running. Boom, here you go. If there's anything you need, let us know. They've been super, cooperative. When I say cooperative, I don't mean like I'm demanding something. I mean, they've been super collaborative is the better word. So it is interesting when you talk to different companies. Like, Volendre wanted me to open up every single sleeping bag I have, pull the down out a little bit, and show everyone the down quality in each sleeping bag, which I thought was a little excessive. I get where they're going with it, but the time and money involved with that is pretty dramatic. So in the end, it is interesting to see how each of these companies interact with you. There are some companies that want stuff. They want themselves to be seen a certain way. I never agree to that. It is what it is. Like I'm showing you right now, like this was an issue. I reached out to this company a lot about this, and to this day, they're kind of like poo-pooing the fact that this doesn't work very well. Their draft tube collars, they're just like, yeah, that is what it is. It's kind of a behind-the-scenes look at, what it's like to do videos. A lot of people ask, what's it like to work with manufacturers? Yeah, you get all this cool stuff, but the problem is presenting this stuff in a fair manner and working with companies and trying to make a difference, if you will. Like when I saw that, I was like, whoa, I felt bad for Volendre. I was like, oh, they definitely want to know about this. Like if I was the owner of this company and someone who tests gear out and we sent a sleeping bag out to said, hey, I think you might have an issue, especially with your quality assurance, which I have a past with being a assistant research scientist. I would think that would be something they'd look into on their assembly line and their way whatever they do in production. So that just like blew me away that they were like, oh, there's no problem. That's how it is. Yeah, no problem. So those are things you deal with when you're, a YouTuber that reviews things. If you guys have any questions or anything, let me know. Thanks for taking a look at the behind the scenes. Until next time, later.